Hello, welcome to this session on organizational behavior. I'm Dr. Bargavi and I'm an associate professor in Department of Management Studies in Bharat University. So in the last session we saw about different concepts of personality. We saw about the traits which make an individual. So we discussed about the theories that formed the foundation of personality. We discussed about the factors influencing personality, the personality trait types, and about the effect of these personality traits on work behavior. So in this session we will be seeing about perception. So what is perception? We know that perception is something that is related to seeing. So perception can be inferred as the way in which a person is going to see the world. So perception can be defined as a process of selection, organization, and the interpretation of sensations to provide a meaningful experience for individuals. So this definition was given by Fred Lutyens, and he stressed the importance of perception. Now, perception can provide meaningful information to individuals when they gather information through five senses of theirs, like smelling or hearing or touching or vision, seeing or taste. So perception is influenced by the people's values, their beliefs, their needs and their emotions. So the same situation, when different individuals face different situations, so each and every situation will be perceived in a different manner by different people. So perception is important in organizational behavior so that people are able to perceive themselves and they are able to perceive the other work environments. So there are different elements that has formed perception, namely stimulus, selection, organization, interpretation and response. So the next slide talks about the importance of perception. So what is or why is perception important? If we see, perception is important in developing and understanding human behavior. For example, now I have a group of 5 people working along with me. Now when I tend to understand my colleagues better, then I perceive them in a good manner, in a better manner. So perception is going to shape the human behavior. Then every individual perceives the world in a different way. We know that people have different sorts of perception. They don't each, as we know that the 5 fingers in our hands are not the same. They differ in size. Similarly, perception of individuals will also differ from time to time and when people to people. Then management can improve the behavior of employees by understanding their perception. So for example, let us take a situation where the top management wants to implement some change inside the organization. Now if the top management will not know any information about the employee's background or the employee's experience, or they don't know anything about the employees, then in that case will they be able to implement the change in an effective way? No. So the top management will have to understand the perception of employees, what they feel, what do they suggest, what will be their desire, what will be their suggestions. So when the top management is able to understand the perception of employees, they will be able to frame decisions and strategies accordingly. Then the next importance of perception is that needs of various people can be understood, and it helps managers to understand what kind of motivation can be given. Now we know that a perception is going to help an employee to see himself and the work environment. So once the manager is able to understand that this person has a good perception on the work environment, he views his organization as an asset, then in that case the managers or they may be able to easily motivate the employees to perform better. And once perception is in place, then the conflicts between employees or the conflicts between groups or different levels of the organizations distractions can be reduced. So this is the importance of perception. The next slide talks about the process of perception. So what are the steps that are involved in the forming of a perception is seen here. The first one is receptive stimuli, then selection, organization, which consists of grouping, closure and simplification, and the next step is the interpretation, and then the final stage is reaction. So what is stimuli? In the first step we see that it is going to be the receptive stimuli. Now what is stimuli? Stimuli itself, the term itself says that stimulation is going to happen or inducement. So stimuli is essential for the commencement of perception. So the stimuli, it can be in any form. It can be in the form of objects that is going to stimulate the desire inside me to perform something, or it can be in the form of events, something that is going to happen in future, or it can be in the form of people who's going to shower their love on me and make me to do the work. So stimuli can refer to anything that is going to induce the excitement inside a person to perform something. Now, what is this receptive stimuli? We know that perception starts with stimuli, so the individual should be willing to receive stimuli from his environment. So stimuli can be received through hearing or smelling or touching, tasting, or even seeing. So based on our 5 senses, we should be able to or willing to receive stimuli as a first step in perception. Then the second step in the process is selection. So we saw that there are different forms in which stimuli can happen or occur. So we have to select one particular or specific form in which we have to receive the stimuli. So this selection is a fundamental step in the process of perception, and it involves choosing stimuli that is always relevant to the individual. So we all know that it is not possible for individuals to consider everything in the environment. Let us say that we know that there are 5 senses. So each sense is going to come up with a stimuli. So we'll not be able to consider all the 5 stimuli at one particular time. So we have to select what kind of stimuli are we going to imply in ourselves for perception. Then the third one is organization, which includes grouping, closure and simplification. So what is organization? We know that organization means you are going to join different parts, assimilate them, and you are going to combine them as a meaningful whole. So this organization, the third step, can also be referred as a Gestalt process. So Gestalt means to organize. So this organization will consist of grouping, closure and simplification. So grouping is where the inputs, the different forms of stimuli, they are grouped together into one category, and then the individual is able to select the stimuli. So inputs are grouped together based on their common characteristics. Then the second one is closure. What happens in closure? So in case of inadequate information available in the environment, then the decisions can be taken based on the past events. So the past events will help the individual to come to a particular junction where decisions can be taken. So closure. Then the third one is simplification. What is simplification? Simplification is where you are giving priority to which things will come first. So this thing first, this thing second. So you're going to organize, you're going to simplify the process. So simplification is where less important things are avoided and attention is given to things that need priority. So the fourth step in the process is interpretation. What happens in interpretation? Interpretation is where the perceiver has to infer the inputs which he gets from the environment. So these inputs have to be organized using this earlier step, grouping, closure and simplification, and then it should be interpreted. So the interpretation of an individual will take place based on his feelings or based on his emotions, based on his behavior. So interpretation will be the fourth step. Then the last step in the process of perception is reaction. So what happens in reaction? Reaction is going to be the final outcome or the final act of perception. So the behavior, the reaction may be of different types. Some people may overreact, some people may be coward, they may come up with changes in attitudes, or some people may not react at all. So behavior is a result, or reaction is a result of interpretation. So the process of perception consists of 5 steps. The first one is receptive stimuli, selection, organization, interpretation and reaction. Then the next slide talks about determinants of perception. So what are the factors that is going to influence the perception of individuals? So the factors that influence the perception of individuals can be qualities of the perceiver, the characteristics of the perceived, the external factors, the internal factors, organization structure and social factors. So coming to the first factor, the qualities of the perceiver. Who is a perceiver? Who is a perceiver? A perceiver is a person who is going to view. So we know that perception differs from one person to another because of the difference in the individual's characteristics. So for instance, one employee may think or may perceive his workplace as a place for proving his talents, for proving his capacity, whereas another employee may consider the workplace as a place just to earn money or for monetary benefits. So perception will differ from person to person, and what are the dominant qualities of the perceiver which is going to influence perception is listed here. The first point is attitude, motives and interest. So what is the attitude of the perceiver? The attitude of the perceiver will obviously influence perception. Now let us take an example. If a student has a negative perception on the teacher, then he may not take the teacher's advice or suggestions in a serious manner. So he'll just try to avoid the face-to-face interactions with the teacher whom he has a negative perception on. So similarly, an employee, let us take an employee's example. An employee who has a positive perception on the organization or about the organization will be willing to work for the organization's welfare, and he will be able to follow the rules and regulations laid down by the organization. So the attitude of the person who is perceiving the environment is going to play a vital role. Then motives. What are motives? Or how is motive going to influence perception? So we know that motives are the desires of an individual that is going to induce him to do something. Okay, so motives of people will influence their response to stimuli. So an employee may be motivated by achievement. If achievement is going to be his motivation, then he will prefer to do jobs of accomplishing the organizational objectives. Similarly, an employee who is creative, his motivation will be the job that gives him the opportunity to prove his creativity. So motives will form one of the key roles in perception. Then interest. The interest of individuals, it influences their attention and recognition of stimuli. So let us assume that a company makes announcements about training programs and financial incentives. Now, if the employee is interested in improving their skills, will pay attention to training programs basically. Similarly, employees who prefer money or monetary benefits, they will obviously go with the incentives being stated to them. So interest of individuals will play an important role in determining perception. Then the second point is experience. So the experience of a person is going to influence his perception level. So if the student, let us take an example of a student. If a student has studied under sincere and dedicated teachers, then he would perceive that all the teachers are very good natured, all the teachers are very talented. Whereas if a superior has led subordinates who are lazy or very calm and composed, then his perception about the subordinates will always be negative in nature. So we saw a positive example of a student and a teacher and a negative example of a superior and a subordinate. So experience matters. Experience, the situations that the individual face and the consequences of the situations will determine the perception of individuals. Then expectation. What happens in expectation? Expectation has an important impact on perception. How? People generally, they see what they want to see. So if I desire that I want to see this particular thing, then my mind will be focused on that particular thing and I will search for that particular thing in the environment I see. So expectation plays an important role. Then personality, learning and personality. So under learning and personality, if you see, the personality of an individual is going to play an important role in the perception. So an employee who is going to be very quality conscious will perceive the organization's quality control measures in a positive manner. Whereas if the employee's personality is going to be a dark one, a dark personality person will not give in heed to the employee, the organization's policies and regulations. So these are the different qualities of the perceiver that is going to determine the perception of employees. Then the next determinant of perception is characteristics of the perceived. So now we saw that a perceiver is a person who's going to see or judge others. Now the perceived is the person about whom I am going to judge. So the opponent is called as the perceived. Now if we see certain qualities of the perceived or the target is going to influence what is being perceived. So the tenets under here are physical appearance, verbal communication and non-verbal communication. So under physical appearance is going to constitute of what? It is going to constitute of how tall I am, or how what is my body structure and what color am I, what is the color of my eyelids. So all these are going to constitute the physical appearance. So it is going to play an important role in the perception of other people. Now very attractive or unattractive persons are perceived prominently when compared to those who are ordinary looking. So for example, we all perceive a celebrity to be a very good looking person. Similarly, we perceive beggars to be very ugly looking people. Why is that? Why is that? Because our perception has been shaped like that right from our childhood. So physical appearance is going to play an important role in shaping the perception. Then verbal communication. So verbal communication can include the tone, the modulation, the confidence in voice, and the topics discussed by people who influence the perception about him. Now, for instance, let's just take a person who's going to speak very softly. So they would be perceived to be very timid in nature, or they may be perceived to be very humble in nature. So verbal communication, the language, the body language, the way in which one speaks will determine the perception. Then non-verbal communication. What is non-verbal communication? It is going to be providing the important information of the perceived, the opponent. So facial expressions, I smile, I become sad, I become angry. So the facial expressions, the eye contacts of people, then the posture, the way in which one sits, or the way in which one walks, that may all constitute non-verbal communication. Then the external factors. What do external factors comprise of? So external factors will be related to objects and situations that have important influence on perception. So these external factors are size and intensity. Now size is going to influence the attention of people. So let us take a object which is very bigger in size. Now the possibility of people seeing the object which is bigger and getting attracted to it is natural. So big objects or bigger things grab the attention of individuals. Then intensity. What is intensity? Intense stimuli should get more recognition and attention. So bright and bold letters in an ad, or even in this PPT. Now, if the bright and bold letters are showing, or it has been shown to attract your attention. So, similarly, leaders with a strong voice or an intense modulation, they will have a strong impact on the followers. So, intensity, the depth is going to shape the perception of people. Then, contrast. Why is contrast necessary, or what is contrast? We know what is contrast. What is contrast? Contrast is something that is going to happen oppositely, or contrast means opposite. Yes, so contrasting objects or situations will get more attention from people. So, in fact, let us take an example of a factory. Now, in a factory, the machines that do not run will get the attention of employees because it is giving a hurdle. It is becoming a hurdle. So, those machines that don't run will get more attention than the ones that is running smoothly. So contrast, the opposite, yes, the opposite will get more attention. So even in this slide, if you see, the reason why we have put different contrasting colors is just to grab the watcher's attention. So to grab your focus into the slide, different colors, different contrasting colors are used. So that is one of the things that catches the eye, that catches the perception of an individual. Then repetition. What is a repetition? Repeated actions or repeated stimuli will get more attention when compared to that stimuli that is not being repeated. So the actions that keep on taking place from time to time will catch the perception of individuals, and those events or those actions that do not happen will lose the perception. Then the next one is familiarity. See, we are very comfortable with familiar things. We are very convenient with familiar things. Why? Why is that? Why do we actually, why do we have this reluctance inside us to change? Why? Why? Because if things are familiar, if things are known, then we are highly comfortable. So familiarity is where people like to see objects or hear messages or do something that is well known to them, which is very familiar to them. So employees would be more attentive if training is given in the proper their familiar language, or in the familiar skill, or in the familiar background. So familiarity is going to determine the level of perception. Then novelty. What is novelty? What is novelty? Novelty means new ideas, new concepts, new techniques, new skills. So all these are going to grab the attention, or it is going to get a recognition from people around. So novel ideas or novel skills or novel concepts are going to grab the attention of people. So novelty is going to shape the perception. Then the last point is situation. How does a situation influence the perception of people? For example, now let us say that we are working in a team of 5 or 6. Now, if the team leader gives us a very huge amount of task, and we are not able to finish the task within the stipulated time, then will we have a good perception on our team leader? No, obviously no. Why? Because we will perceive the team leader to be very task oriented, and we think that he is not friendly with us. He is just imposing huge amount of work on us. So situations in which people work, or the favorable working policies of an organization, the healthy relationships, all these develop a positive attitude of workers, and it shapes the perception of individuals. Then the next determinant is internal factor. So what do internal factors comprise of? It comprises of psychological setup, learning, and background. So what is psychological setup? Before going with the psychological setup, what are internal factors? Internal factors are those that can be controlled, yes. So those factors that are going to fall within the control of the perceiver can be termed as internal factors. So these internal factors comprise of these three elements. The first one is psychological setup. So what is psychological setup? People, they generally perceive what they like to perceive. This may be based on their attitude, or their interest, or their preferences. So psychology has an important influence on individuals' perception. Then learning. So what happens under learning? The perception of people depends on this zeal to learn. So those people who are educated, those people who are knowledgeable to perceive things, they have a good level of perception when compared to uneducated people. Qualified managers tend to perceive the organization and its employees better, and they have this zeal to learn new things and implement new things at workplace. So it is going to determine the level of perception. Then background. What do you mean by background? What is the backdrop here? What is something that is laying behind me? So background is the level of understanding which is influenced by the social and economic characteristics. So those who are socially and economically developed tend to understand the importance of growth and improvement better. So a background of individuals will play a dominant role in shaping the perception. The next determinant is organizational structure. Now, what is a structure? We know that structure refers to the roles and responsibilities, or the hierarchies, the positions available in the organization. So, organization structure has a very important influence in the perception process. So, the contents here are perceptual process and perceptual workplace. Under perceptual process, the perception of employees and management may be different with regard to the performance standards. So an employee who gives suggestions for improvement may be perceived as creative by the management, or people who are generally laid back, who don't involve much in the decision making process, who don't give suggestions, they are considered to be apart, or they are considered to be that they don't gel well with others, they are not a team player. So perceptual process is going to shape the perception of individuals. Then perceptual workplace. What does this mean? The environmental conditions in the workplace, such as the noise. Yes, then the lighting, the heat, the temperature, the ambience, everything is going to constitute perceptual workplace. So all employees may not perceive the same situation in the same manner. So some people may have a positive perception about the workplace, some may have a negative perception about the workplace. So perceptual workplace is an important factor. Then the last determinant is social factor. So perception is going to differ based on social conditions and the situations faced by individuals. So social factors can consist of projection, halo effect, and stereotyping. Now, what is projection? Projection is going to be something where the future events are predicted or forecasted. So projection process differs from one person to another, and people may tend to expect or predict future events which may differ from reality. Then this will obviously influence their level of perception. Then the second one is halo effect. What does halo effect mean? What is halo? Halo means what? Halo effect occurs only when one particular trait or characteristic is considered for perception. So let us say that I am a very jovial person. I get along with people so much. I am an extrovert. I enjoy the company of other people. Now, there may be situations when I would have got annoyed. I would have lost my temper. Now, halo effect will be applied in this situation when the opponent is just going to perceive one particular trait of me and judge me based on that one particular trait alone. Okay, so this is called as halo effect. Now, what is stereotyping? What does stereotyping mean? We have heard these terms called as gender stereotyping, workplace stereotyping. What does it mean? What does stereotyping mean? So stereotyping is where generalizations are made based on group characteristics. So when a person is perceived on the basis of his group without considering his individual traits, then that's called as stereotyping. So stereotyping may be positive, or it may be negative, or it may be neutral also. So stereotyping happens because of the tendency to pay selective attention to environment. So for example, now I work in a group of 5 or 6. Now if all the 5 or 6 members, they are very much task oriented, they are achievement oriented. Now all these 5 or 6 people are going to complete the task on time, and they have a very high level of goodwill among all the other teams. Now the people who perceive me when I work with this team will also perceive me to be a very hardworking person, a very much achievement oriented person. So that is called as stereotyping, where I am judged based on the group I gel with or the group I belong to. That's called as stereotyping. So these are the different determinants of perception. We have qualities of the perceiver, the characteristics of the perceived, the external factors, the internal factors, the organization's structure, and the social factors. So with this we come to the end of the session, where we have talked about what is perception, and then the importance of perception. Yes, then we talked about the process of perception and the different determinants of perception. So hope you all enjoyed staying connected. See you all in the next session. Take care, stay safe, bye.